Even though I had two sons, Robert and David, they became attached to Karen, who filled their heads with lies. As a result, they started neglecting their parents. After I kicked Karen, Robert, and David out of the house, John passed away suddenly. When I informed Robert over the phone, his response was unbelievable. "Wait, Dad?"
Just leave the funeral arrangements to Mom. I don't even want to see the face of someone who kicked us out.
Yeah, exactly. We're having a great time, so don't bother us.
Just tell the relatives we're not coming because of work. Send them our regards.
I was stunned. A week after the funeral, I received a letter from John. When I opened it, the first thing I read was,
Please make sure the kids never find this.
as I read further, my heart grew heavy. Karen had trampled all over our family, and Robert and David refused to attend their father's funeral. I'm not going to let this slide. My name is Emily, a 54-year-old full-time working housewife. I first met John at a welcome party for new employees at the related companies where we both worked. Even though I couldn't handle alcohol well, I was pressured to drink. I ended up feeling sick because I couldn't refuse properly. While I was sitting quietly in a corner, trying to figure out the best time to leave, John noticed and offered to call a taxi for me, which I gratefully accepted. A few days later, I took a day off to visit John's office to thank him, and he was surprised to see me during his break.
I can't believe you came all the way to thank me. You're really diligent.
After that, our friendship developed into a relationship, and we eventually married. John had a complicated upbringing, and I lost my parents as a child. We both longed for a warm family and believed we could be happy together. However, once we started living together, John's older sister, Karen, began to cause problems. Before our wedding, I tried to meet Karen, but she was too busy and didn't make time for us. So, our first meeting was at the wedding itself. John's parents had already passed away, so the wedding was a simple affair with just our friends and relatives. But Karen made a scene in more ways than one. At the wedding, she wore an inappropriate white dress that accentuated her cleavage. The strong scent of perfume, and, on top of that, makeup as heavy as a stage actress. I tried not to show my discomfort, but maybe she noticed or didn't like me initially, as she greeted me with a sneer.
John, couldn't you find someone better at work? Having a plain girl like her as a sister-in-law is embarrassing.
Sis,
Well, she may suit a goody two-shoes like you.
John looked like he was about to snap, but fighting with his sister on our wedding day would have been terrible. "It's fine, let's go finish getting ready," I said, forcing a smile and guiding John to the staff. Despite the awful first impression, I didn't dwell on it too much, thinking we'd only see her at family events. But soon, things took a sudden turn. Karen, whose short marriage ended due to her husband's affair, suddenly moved into our home.
My ex-husband left, but I want to move too. I can't return to my old place because I sold it when I married. Can I stay here for a while?
When Karen called, John looked thoroughly annoyed.
why don't you just rent an apartment? Didn't you get a lot of alimony from your husband?
Can I stay here until I find a new place? I want to choose a nice one. And like you too, I want to settle for something other than an old, rundown house. I mean, a 20-year-old house? Even with a yard and garage, I'd hate it.
Enough. It's been reinforced and remodeled. Just rent a short-term place.
Just kidding. It's charming, really. I'll move in this weekend when my lease is up.
In the end, Karen returned with her things and moved in uninvited. The biggest issue was that Karen needed to have a sense of being a guest in our home. She acted as if it were her own, causing both John and me great stress. Karen would go out partying every night and sleep until the following afternoon. She never helped with the housework. She sat on the living room sofa all day, playing on her phone or watching TV. And then, after dinner, she'd head out to party again. When I occasionally took a day off, I'd see her living like that, so I knew it was happening daily. When I'd come home tired from my full-time job in the evening, Karen would complain,
Hey, is dinner ready yet? When will it be done?
"In about 30 minutes.
That long? Hurry it up.
She'd also make snide remarks like, "You're bad at cleaning," or "You're cutting corners too much." John and I share the cleaning duties.
He's tired too. As the wife, you should do all the housework.
I tried not to vent to John because I didn't want to strain their relationship further, but as I grew increasingly upset, John seemed to pick up on it. When he asked about Karen's behavior, I told him everything, and he was furious.
Sis, you're a freeloader. Stop giving orders.
Oh, I was just stating the obvious.
Karen said nonchalantly.
And pay for your living expenses.
I'm too emotionally wrecked from my husband's affair to work right now. And you want to charge me rent?
You can pay from the $50,000 alimony. You have money for clothes and nights out, after all.
I don't need my little brother telling me how to spend my money.
This kind of back and forth left both John and me exasperated. It felt like we were punching a brick wall. The happy marriage we had dreamed of was quickly unraveling, all thanks to Karen. John and I wanted children, but perhaps due to Karen's stress, it wasn't happening. We even discussed getting tested, but in the 4th year of our marriage, I finally found out I was pregnant. John and I cried with joy. John seized the opportunity and suggested to Karen that she move.
Sis, we'll be short on space once the baby comes. It may be time you moved into an apartment.
Karen then turned to me and asked,
Emily, what about your job?
"I'm planning to return after a year of maternity leave."
Then I'll look after the baby.
What? No, it's okay. I'll put them in daycare.
You don't know this, but all the daycare centers around here are full.
After checking with the city office and gathering information from experienced moms, I discovered that even non-accredited daycare centers had over a year's wait list.
See, I told you.
A few months later, Karen looked at my growing belly with a proud smile and said,
I'll take care of the baby until they get into daycare. I'll do it for free since you've always helped me out. And if you quit your job, your finances will be tight, right?
After much discussion, John and I decided to ask Karen for help. Honestly, I was very anxious. But, contrary to my expectations, Karen adored Robert when he was born. She diligently studied parenting tips online, cared for his meals and other needs, and took him to the park and children's centers. It was clear from how much Robert was attached to her that Karen was really engaged with him. Even when our second son, David, was born 2 years later, this didn't change. John and I were both busy with work during the week, so we couldn't spend much time with our kids, and we were grateful for Karen's help. However, as our sons grew older, they openly avoided us.
Robert, David, how about we go to a theme park at the end of the month?
Well, we'll go with Karen.
Okay, let's go for a steak dinner to celebrate David's birthday. You mentioned you wanted to do that.
Karen already took us to a fancy steakhouse the other day. We will have sushi at a high-end place for my brother's birthday. Can't wait.
Listening to our sons excitedly discuss their plans, John and I felt mixed emotions. Even after Robert and David started school, Karen continued to spend time with them on days when John and I had to work. However, even when we were home on the weekends, Robert and David clung to Karen. They barely spoke to John and me, preferring to play games and go out with her as if they were fine without their parents. As Robert entered the upper grades of elementary school, the situation worsened. Whenever John or I tried to talk to them, they'd make faces, ignore us, or even click their tongues in annoyance. When Robert started eating while playing a mobile game, I scolded him one day. He glared at me and spat out.
Shut up, old hag.
For a moment, I couldn't believe my ears.
Man, I wish Karen was my mom. She always gives us money and takes us to cool places.
Totally. We got the short end of the stick being born to these parents.
Shocked by their words, I tried to stay calm and said, Karen is perfectly healthy, but doesn't work, doesn't contribute to our household, and just spends the alimony from her ex-husband.
So what? I wish I could live like that.
Robert said dreamily.
Besides, Karen's the one who raised us. It's weird for you to complain.
Yeah, seriously. It's like you guys didn't even want kids.
What?
Oh, we know. Karen told us you only had us because she pushed you into it.
That's not true. John and I always wanted kids. Karen offered to help until we found a daycare. I desperately denied it. To think you'd say such things. I was on the verge of tears when Robert sneered.
You guys are so annoying, always nagging us about homework and playing too many games.
Yeah, if you didn't want her to care for us, you should have just done it yourself.
I snapped back. Karen has no responsibility for your future. John and I only say these things because we're worried about you, even if it means you'll hate us.
Oh, right. You're just jealous that we're closer to Karen.
Yeah, if you didn't want her to care for us, you should have done it yourself.
Just as I was about to burst into tears, I saw John standing at the doorway, his fists trembling.
Who do you think you're talking to?
Oh, hey, Dad. Didn't know you were home. Another day of overtime, huh? Thanks for working so hard.
No matter how much overtime you do, your pay still sucks.
You're not wrong.
As our sons laughed loudly, John was at a loss for words.
After all this time, the first thing you do when you talk to us is insult your parents?
Oh, John, stop being so loud.
Karen came down from her room and poked her head into the kitchen. She shrugs her shoulders with a mix of disbelief.
Getting all worked up over what kids say is so immature.
This is your fault for spoiling them.
John snapped angrily.
I can't take this anymore. Get out now.
Really? You're kicking me out after all the love I showed your sons?
If you're going to stay here, start paying for your living expenses.
Karen pouted.
Fine, fine. I'll leave.
Wait, Karen, you're leaving?
No way.
Surprisingly, Karen agreed quickly. She went to her room, packed her things into a suitcase, and brought them down to the front door.
I've packed my clothes in boxes, so I'll have movers pick them up this weekend. Keep them here until then.
Oh, okay.
Karen, you're really going?
Yeah, take care, boys.
She smiled at Robert and David, who had come to see her off at the gate, and left our house. But with Karen gone, the rift between us and our sons could not be easily mended. As Robert entered middle school and David reached the upper grades of elementary school, they became rebellious toward us. A few years later, Robert graduated high school and got a job but quit within a month. 2 years later, David followed suit, quitting his job after just a few days. Now boasting about starting their own business, the brothers got involved in shady dealings and blew their money on one-night splurges. After a huge argument, John kicked them both out of the house.
Don't come back until you've got a steady job.
Screw that. We're never coming back to this place.
And so Karen, who had wreaked havoc on our family and the sons she had influenced, was gone, leaving just John and me. I worried about Robert and David, wondering if they were doing okay, but I felt a sense of relief without the three of them around to cause trouble. That winter, when I was about to leave work and head home, one of John's colleagues called me.
Is this his wife? Oh, John collapsed at the office.
What?
He's currently receiving treatment in the ICU at a private hospital.
Understood. I'll be there right away. I almost panicked, but I ordered myself to stay calm and drove to the hospital. I identified myself at the ICU reception and waited in the hallway for a while. The automatic doors opened, and a white male who appeared to be a doctor stepped out. As soon as he saw me, he lowered his gaze to the floor.
We did everything we could. I'm sorry.
I was speechless. I stood frozen in shock. Just this morning, I saw John off at the front door as he left for work, as always.
Keep next month's anniversary free, okay?
Sure, same restaurant as usual?
This year, I've got a surprise plan. But yeah, it's at the same restaurant.
I never imagined that would be our last conversation. Suddenly, it felt like my entire world had turned gray. I wanted to know if there was any point in living on my own now. Despite the morbid thoughts swirling in my mind, I knew I had to inform everyone, so I called Robert, David, and Karen. I left a message on their voicemails saying, "John has passed away," and sent them texts as well. That evening, Robert called me back. I could hear lively music and chatter in the background, indicating he was likely dining out. "Robert, your father." My voice trembled, but Robert responded with a half smile.
You can handle the funeral, Mom. I don't want to see the guy who kicked us out.
Yeah. We're having a good time here, so don't bother us.
Oh wow, John really wasn't well liked, right?
I could hear Karen chuckling on the other end of the line.
Just tell the relatives we're missing the funeral because of work or something. Pass along our regards.
Wait a minute. For a moment, I was stunned, clutching my phone. Were these people really John's sister and son? Despite the emptiness I felt, I knew I had to move forward with the funeral arrangements. I contacted John's relatives, the family temple, and the usual funeral home, and we held a small family service. The suddenness of his death made it feel unreal, and I couldn't even cry during the service. However, once the usual routine returned, I was constantly reminded of the reality that John was gone. While preparing meals, recording the TV shows we used to watch together, or making coffee, I'd catch myself preparing 2 servings or talking to the empty space beside me, only to realize that John wasn't there anymore, and the tears would start flowing. A week after John's passing, I was watering the flowers in the garden when the mailman arrived. I took the mail and went inside. Amid the usual junk mail, I found a letter addressed to me. My eyes widened in disbelief. With a racing heart, I opened the envelope. The letter started by explaining how it came to be delivered to me.
I asked an old friend to mail this if I ever passed away.
After expressing his deep gratitude for our years together, John wrote something that immediately caught my attention.
Please read this in a place where the kids won't find it.
As I read on, my heart filled with emotion. He had understood all along how much I worried about the kids. Tears welled up. I wiped them away and made a decision. I would honor John's wishes. Karen had trampled all over our family, and Robert and David had refused to attend their father's funeral. You wait. I'm not letting this end here. I immediately took action. John's letter had included instructions.
There's something stored in a safe deposit box at the bank near the station. Use the unclosed key to retrieve it and keep it with you. Leave the rest to Emily.
Relying on the address in the letter, I headed to the bank and entered the safe deposit room next to the ATMs. With a pounding heart, I followed the instructions and inserted the card into the slot on the table. After entering the PIN, a square section of the table opened up, revealing the safe deposit box John had rented. I unlocked the box with the key and checked the contents. Sure enough, it held exactly what John had described in the letter. I placed the items in my bag and left the bank. A few days later, I invited Karen, Robert, and David to the house. I want to share John's estate with those close to him. When I said that, the 3 showed up eagerly without hinting of suspicion. I was disgusted. The word shameless couldn't be more fitting. They had skipped the funeral, but were all too eager for the inheritance. How brazen could they be? Karen arrived first, but couldn't contain her excitement as I made tea. Her cheeks flushed as she started a conversation with me.
That stingy man with his lousy paycheck actually left something behind, huh?
Karen, he probably had some hidden stash because he was such a penny pincher.
Thinking about it that way, being cheap might not be so bad.
Maybe he transferred the inheritance to some account. Either way, this is going to be fun.
Karen then smiled at me.
You actually did the right thing by letting your sister-in-law know.
Well, sort of.
Mom, Don't keep us in suspense. What's the inheritance? Jewelry? Maybe even gold bars.
I looked around at their eager faces and smiled sweetly. Before that, listen to this. When I placed the voice recorder and John's cell phone on the dining table, Robert, David, and Karen looked bewildered.
That's Dad's cell phone. But what's this?
It's a voice recorder, the kind they use for catching cheaters. I've seen it on TV. Wait, are you telling me Dad, with that face, was cheating?
Robert started laughing loudly and crudely, but as soon as I pressed the playback button on the phone, his face froze. The voice played was Robert talking on the phone with his friends.
Yeah. Remember that old lady you met at my place the other day? Her name is Karen.
Robert was speaking in a cheerful tone.
She's caked in makeup and always clinging to me, saying, "Oh, Robert dear, it's gross, but if you flatter her a little, she'll immediately give you money. It's like using the fool and the old lady."
As Robert froze in place, Karen's face twisted in rage. When I stopped the playback, Karen asked in a voice full of anger.
Robert, what was that?
What? I don't know. It must have been some stranger. Or maybe Dad made it up and recorded it himself.
Robert tried to play dumb, but Karen yelled at him.
John's terrible with technology. He couldn't do something like that.
I just remembered I have something to do, so I'm heading out.
David quietly tried to sneak out as Robert and Karen argued, but I quickly played the second recording.
Hey bro, how much did Karen give you for New Year's?
$1,000.
Damn, she only gave me $500. What did you do?
I gave her a bouquet of roses and a high-end bag for her birthday.
Then I should give her a fake brand item. She wouldn't know the difference anyway.
You're right about that.
Robert and David laughed heartily.
That old lady lives to get gifts from men. It's pathetic at her age.
She's almost 60, but she still thinks she's young. She's always spending big money at that host club. What an easy mark.
She's a fool.
Their insults knew no bounds.
Her dyed blonde hair at that age is a joke too.
She dreams of marrying a young Korean idol.
Even as a joke, it's pathetic.
The recording abruptly ended with a click as Robert and David were laughing. David forced a strained smile and muttered defensively.
When did Dad even record this stuff? And then he has Mom reveal it after he's dead? That's twisted.
Yeah, right? Acting all righteous, but he's the least trustworthy.
Hearing Robert and David's insults towards John at this point filled me with intense anger. But before I could speak, Karen yelled at them.
How dare you mock people like that? Who do you think raised you from when you were kids? Don't you dare joke about this.
See, that's what's so annoying about you. You're always so self-righteous.
Yeah, doesn't it feel empty saying that yourself?
Mocked by Robert and David, Karen turned red to her ears. You're next, Karen. I hear you have a favorite host club. That's interesting. As I picked up the voice recorder, Karen's face stiffened. Ignoring her, I pressed the playback button. First, lively music, clinking glasses, and a mix of male and female voices played. Then, Karen's voice, high-pitched and full of energy, suddenly cut through the conversation.
That's right. I've been grooming my nephews since they were this small. I'd feed them all sorts of lies about their parents. Kids are so easy to manipulate.
Wow, Karen, You're brilliant.
Flattered by the host, Karen continued proudly.
I'm single, so I need someone to care for me in my old age. Look, isn't he handsome?
He really is. Like a model or an idol.
Encouraged by the host's admiration, Karen became even more talkative.
In the future, I'll have my nephews feed me, take me to amusement parks, and change my diapers. I'd never want to end up in a facility. If I have to depend on someone, it'll be a handsome man. I'm so looking forward to it.
I stopped the recording and looked at Karen. Karen turned away, trying to avoid the piercing stares from Robert and David.
You and your husband have terrible taste. And here you are sneaking around recording this.
I heard from the relatives that you were partying a lot, so I was curious. After all, the alimony from your ex-husband should have run out years ago, and you've been unemployed ever since. So I hired a private investigator to look into you, Karen. I explained. And this is what they found. You're really something, Karen.
No, she's not. She's just a disgusting old hag.
What does she think we are?
As Robert and David crossed their arms and glared at her, Karen shot them an angry look.
Shut up. I indeed took care of you. I spent my precious time and money on you. What's wrong with expecting something in return?
Spent money, huh? Oh, you mean this? I opened a bank book on the table, and Robert and David's eyes lit up.
Oh, finally, the inheritance.
Well, kind of, but... I glanced at Karen, who was now sweating nervously. She looked like she wanted to run away, but was too scared to move, her eyes darting around the room. I turned to Robert and David. Do you remember me telling you that John cut ties with his father before he married?
Yeah, I remember.
Robert nodded.
Our grandfather, Dad's father, was a spoiled rich kid who never worked hard, right? He wasted his inheritance on a lavish lifestyle and ended up in huge debt.
Exactly. John's mother had to work herself to death to pay off the debts. Isn't that right, Karen?
Yeah. I cut ties with him too after I became an adult, though I did attend the funeral.
Karen nodded. That's why John kept the inheritance he received from a wealthy relative in a secret account, without telling the three of you.
I wasn't told anything about this.
If you had the money, you should have let us know.
I was planning to start the inheritance process once you guys started working seriously, but someone started using it without permission before that. Robert and David both turned to look at Karen simultaneously.
No way.
Yes, while John was still alive, Karen took his stamp and bank book without permission and withdrew the money. Both of them hesitantly looked at the bank book and gasped.
$10,000 down to $5 in a year?
What did you spend it on?
He suggested it to me, saying it was a good investment. I could double it and return it. I only borrowed a little bit.
As Karen twisted her body, Robert and David became furious.
You've got to be kidding me. That was the money we were supposed to get.
You're making a big deal over just $10,000. Considering how hard it was to raise you, I should be given that money for free.
As Karen shamelessly retorted, Robert and David's foreheads bulged angrily, and they looked ready to pounce. That's not all, Karen. I sighed and spread out Robert and David's bank books on the table. Since both of you got jobs right after high school, I left your college funds untouched. I planned to give them to you once you started working seriously, but that was also taken. Seeing that hardly anything was left in their accounts, Robert started scratching his head, and David looked like he was about to cry.
You old witch. What you did is a crime.
Yeah, we'll sue you.
You're so stupid. There's a rule about family theft. Even if you steal money from a relative, it's not a crime.
Karen, arms crossed, laughed haughtily.
I'll pay it back someday. Maybe in the next life.
Oh, but it is a crime. That's why I called the police earlier. Karen's eyes went wide at my words.
What?
It's true that if a relative with you commits a crime, they aren't held accountable. That's why John kicked you out. He intended to report it. Karen, stunned, looked at me and said in disbelief,
You sold out your husband's sister?
Well, yes, that's what it comes down to.
No way. Unbelievable. After everything I did to help you, you're so ungrateful.
Who's the ungrateful one here? As I shouted back, the room fell silent. I glared at Karen, my anger boiling over. Because of you, my family is in shambles. There's no way to fix it now. What are you going to do about it?
Oh, don't be so dramatic.
Karen shrugged her shoulders. I should have kicked you out when I realized you couldn't be trusted. At that, Karen looked at Robert and David and smiled eerily.
I wanted to be a mom,
What?
but since I couldn't be a mom, I decided to take your mom away from you too, out of spite.
Robert and David looked terrified.
Oh, is your head okay?
Anyway, don't ever come near me again.
That's a problem. I came here today to borrow money from you.
Karen grinned.
We're family, so we should help each other in need, right?
Yeah, Mom.
Robert and David, who were raging just moments ago, suddenly forced smiles.
The thing is, we're broke too.
The manager and my seniors at my job got mad because I took a few days off. When I complained, they fired me right away.
My body burned with anger at my son's shameless requests.
As David and Robert complained, I felt a headache coming on. Getting fired is no surprise.
Why?
Oh, and we got kicked out of our apartment.
Robert casually revealed.
We were late on the rent, so we'll stay here for a while. That's fine, right?
Oh, and could you cover our debts too? Once we're debt-free, we'll finally start working seriously.
You can give us like $20,000, right? You're working after all.
My body burned with anger at my son's shameless requests. Don't be ridiculous. There's no way I'm lending money to a son so heartless that he would skip his own father's funeral. Even though I firmly refused, they continued to beg.
Please, Mom.
If you keep bugging me, I'll report you to the police too. Never set foot in this house again. Just then, the siren of a police car stopped in front of the house. Karen tried to escape in a panic, but she ran into the police officers at the door and was quietly taken away.
Crap, we're going to get arrested too.
Let's get out of here.
Robert and David glanced at me, standing tall, gave up on begging for money, and left. Robert and David finally realized that the New Year's gifts and allowances Karen had given them came from John's and their own savings. It seems they finally had enough of Karen. They've decided they don't want to end up like her, and are finally working seriously, but it looks like their lazy habits aren't going away anytime soon, as they keep calling me one after the other.
The nightclub is asking me to pay up. Mom, could you lend me some money?
I lost it all betting on horses. Can you lend me like $50,000?
Tired of their constant nagging, I blocked their numbers. After that, the two of them begged other relatives for money, but they were called heartless jerks who didn't even show up at their dad's funeral and got cut off by the rest of the family too. Eventually, they were chased by debt collectors after borrowing from shady sources. Finally waking up, Robert and David started working seriously. However, since they had burned so many bridges, they were banned from the nightclubs they frequented and were unwelcome at their favorite bars. They now lament that there's nothing left to enjoy in life. Karen was released soon after paying a fine, since it was her first offense. But that led to her boyfriend dumping her. To make matters worse, she had to repay the money she spent from John's savings and Robert and David's accounts all at once, leaving her with a massive debt. Karen is now working from dawn till late at night, utterly exhausted. I kept it a secret from Karen and the boys, but John had left something else in the safe. A large pink diamond necklace. He wrote in a letter that it was an heirloom passed down from his mother. He planned to give it to me on our 30th wedding anniversary next year. He had kept it in the safe so Karen and the boys wouldn't find it and sell it. When I had it appraised, it was valued at $120,000, which shocked me. I won't sell it since it was a gift from John, but I'll treasure it. I had hoped for a warm and loving family, but unfortunately, I didn't get along with my sons, and I lost my husband too soon. But John is still with me, in my heart. From now on, I want to live intensely, holding on to my memories with John,